You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Best Comics of the Week show, which means I'm here with my favorite Japanese AI, Gray. What up, Gray?
How's it going? Are you Genki today, Jim?
I'm kind of Genki. It's the switcheroo. It's so weird. If people would listen to the two things that we do, one of them is early on in the morning for me, late at night for you, and then this show is the exact opposite. So I know how you feel. I'm tired is what I am, but I'm ready to do this. This always picks me up, though, gets me fired up.
Same here.
Best Comics of the Week. It's one of the times where we can be positive about things and tell everybody the comics that we thought were our favorites, or we know they're our favorites, but it doesn't mean that they're your favorites out there, and we want to beg you to put your favorite comics in the comment section so that everybody can kind of see what everybody's reading and then hopefully go off and read some new things. There's probably a comic this week that I'm picking of the deal. Actually, it's Gray's pick, but I think in my mind, a lot of people won't know much about it. It'll probably be down near the end of the show, but I think you know the one that I mean. But yeah, there's a lot of times where people aren't aware things came out that week and whatnot. So please, if you like anything, there's no judgments. There's nothing like that. Just let everybody know the books that you ended up liking this week. The way that me and Greg kind of came up with the idea is that they're books that would be something that if you were doing a review, you'd score 8 or higher. Like, you know, you have to have some sort of line that you draw or you're just going to pick every single book. But I will tell people that while we didn't have a lot last week, we have a bunch this week. I was surprised. I thought that it was going to be a slim pickings week. And then you sent me your list. I'm like, holy moly. Like, there are a lot of books.
I was worried about seeing that list. I was like, oh, Jim's going to be like, what are you doing, Gray?
There's a lot of indie stuff, but that's kind of how it's been for us. It's been a lot more indie than big too. Even with this week, a lot of people getting excited for the all-in DC announcements, the absolute DC universe. That's down the line. But even people not liking it, at least there's some buzz about comics. It was getting pretty stale where people were not even talking about anything. So, yeah, so even people kind of arguing about it, it's kind of cool as long as they don't get too feisty or sassy. And then we have San Diego Comic-Con next week. I will tell everybody I'm a dummy. I ended up, if you were watching, I had a lot of videos drop. I think it was like Thursday. I thought that San Diego Comic-Con was this weekend. So I ended up not putting any videos up on Friday thinking, where's the news? Like, I thought all this stuff was going to drop. And then, they're probably waiting for Saturdays. And then I realized earlier today, yeah, that's next week.
I thought it was this weekend too. I was looking forward to some great news.
That's good. I'm telling you, I have a guy who gives me kind of the inside scoops of things. And he wasn't, I'm like, what's going on? Like, this guy always lets me know what's going on. Even if it isn't a scoop, it's like, I'm like, why is everything dead? Which makes it worse because the week before anything like San Diego Comic-Con, you're going to have a, blackout. You're not going to have it because you want to save it for the Comic-Con. So,
Jim, is his name Johnny DC?
It might be Johnny DC.
That's your source.
Yeah, no, it's a guy named Jim Lee.
Oh,
nice. I used to talk to Dan Didio, and he would give me some heads up and things like that. That was pretty fun. He talked to a lot of people, though. It wasn't just me. But he was a nice guy when he would talk to me. But even so, I thought it was San Diego Comic-Con. It screwed me. I ended up being so upset with myself because everything's swirling around. I didn't even know to even check. But, hey, it's not San Diego Comic-Con. It's Best of the Week. And we're going to start with DC as we always do. And this is a pick of Gray's. But I almost got to the point, so I'm not that upset with you, that you added this in because it was pretty good. But you give them what it is.
Thank heavens for that. Okay, it is Batman Superman World's Finest, issue 29, written by Mark Waid, art by Dan Murrah, the wonderful Dan Murrah. It's still only $3.99 as well. That's worth pointing out with the DC titles. Good to have a $3.99 book, Jim, isn't it?
Yeah,
so did you read it?
Did you read it? Yeah, I've already reviewed it on our podcast. Okay. I'll tell you, slightly under the 8, but I can certainly agree with you that it was.
You've not been enjoying the mites, have you? Really? That's what I thought. And it does feel a bit stretched out. This story has been drawn out, hasn't it?
But even so, by the end of it, it was for fun.
Yeah,
you got a lot of different mites, and you kind of reset the deal of okay, we're probably not going to see Batmite for a while or Nixie or whatever. I do like the idea, and I wish they would have went in more with it. Like people forget because you see Mixie and Batmite all the time together, but Mixel Spitalik, he's a villain. Like he actually tries to mess with Batmite's just there to help, and he's just goofy, gets in the way. I always like Batmite a lot. Mixie would kind of weird me out at points, especially.
It kind of annoys me. Does he annoy you too? I love the banter with him and Robin through this. That's been so funny.
I will point out, and I'm sure this won't blow people's minds, but the first time that Dick Grayson Robin said that name weird, and Mixie's like, no, it's Mixel Spitalik. I knew for a fact and said it on the podcast that is a setup for a joke that down the line he will say it backwards and then Mixie will say it and go. And I was very proud of myself, but I'm sure a lot of people thought
you called it, Jim. You called it.
Yeah, I just don't like a guy that looks like that with a top hat. That's what freaks me out. And also, he's clad in purple like he's Prince or something from the Fifth Dimension. But I did like it. I just thought that by the end, the big bad and how they vanquished him was a little bit like a hand wave. It felt a little easy. But what they had to do to get, say, Dr. Occult, the Thunderbolt, also Ramen, all these things going, which you like the joke
That's
of the
what
Ramen
did it for
deal.
me.
Yeah.
Jim, I loved it. I love seeing all these magical characters in, which I've not seen some of them for years. You know what I mean?
Dr. Occult, I actually like as a deal, and we'll never see him probably again unless it's something goofy like this, because it's really fun. And some of those Golden Age characters, I like when they bring them in, and I thought that Mark Waid did a really good job, because even when you end up having Batmite and Mixie go back and trying to recruit these guys, and you end up having that, he talked like it was a Golden Age comic where he's explaining things. I thought it was really well done, and did like it. So I'm not gonna question you like some other picks that you had maybe last week, but we'll go with that. So Batman Superman World's Finest, number 29. I ended up putting on my list my only pick for DC, Green Lantern War Journal, number 11. I really liked it. It's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Montos. I haven't been enjoying the series at all. I've been lost. I end up where it just wasn't my thing, though I did like the stuff with Ellie Construct, Ellie and her mom, Shirley. I always like that part. This issue, it hits, and I'm telling you, I'm a grown man, right? I'm an adult, Gray, but I ended up almost crying twice. I ended up on the podcast, and that's the worst. I don't want to cry. Yeah, really. I know. I just sleep with them. I end up where I'm Devo. I end up where I'm talking about it on the podcast, and I got choked up because that part was so well done, and that showed me something. But I said while we were talking about it, this Green Lantern Word Journal deal and the stuff that Jon Stewart's doing with the Revenant Dead and the whole In the Dark Star thing, it was losing me. I didn't understand much of it. It was very, almost like too much lore piled on top of each other.
Especially that last issue, Jim. That was pretty deep and confusing,
it was pretty
wasn't
much
it?
unreadable at points, I thought. People will disagree, but that's fine. This issue, though, suddenly he decides to write it almost like a fable or like a fairy tale kind of play. And you do see the Revenant Queen as a little girl, because you're going back in time and trying to get a redo of Orgrim and these first gods and things like that. And suddenly it like a light bulb went off, and I understood it because he kind of dumbed it down for me, and I need that. But I actually had some okay, I get it. Finally, it was so crazy. And then I read it. First time I read it, I'm like, it's okay. We ended up talking about it on the podcast, and my score skyrocketed because we were having so much fun and talking about it. And so, yeah, I suggest, it's weird. I don't think I would suggest, if you haven't been reading the series or you were confused at one point, I mean, you still have to read the other issues, but boy, this one was so much better. And it's the penultimate issue. The series ends at 12, and then you're going to go off and have backups in Green Lantern again, which is fine. But, I think that this is like a payoff of actually slogging through it, because I was not enjoying a lot of it. So I did enjoy another $3.99 book. So that's something to point out. I love the art,
by the way. Got to shout out. It says Montos as the artist. That's just one word, but yeah, his art is excellent in this.
Sounds like a Canadian rock band or something. Montos. So yeah, I think of Montrose when I hear that. But you end up where, even the art. At first, it was hard. I didn't love it. But everything's kind of coming together. At least, and I said, it's a sad thing for me that I couldn't get into the whole thing. But if you're going to have a strong point, the beginning, or I'd rather have it at the end. I'd rather have
finish.
it wrap up and say, okay, now I get it. Good. All right. And go forward. So I thought it was really, really good. And if you had fallen off the last couple issues, it might be, a good thing to maybe check.
Needs more Guy Gardner, Jim, that's all. That's my only complaint. Just a little bit more.
And when Guy came in at the end, if people read it, and when you read it, or if you're going to read it, think of Han Solo, because I swear to God, he shows up like Han at the end of New Hope, when he's like, ends up coming in to help, and he goes over the comm. I thought it was really cool. And did a good Guy Gardner, not a sus Guy Gardner. A guy who talks some crap, but it's friendly crap. Like, he's like, oh, you're always in the crap there, John Stewart. I always have to come and bail you out. It was great, Guy Gardner. And even that Shepherd Lantern, I'm like, okay, I don't mind you. You're hanging out with Guy. So that's cool. But that's it for DC. Those are the two books we have at DC. I'm sure that some people, I'll tell you, Superman almost made my list. It just was slightly under. I did love Jamal Campbell's art on the issue, except that
me too, yeah.
I have no idea who that Lex Luthor was. All of a sudden, Lex Luthor looked like a 22-year-old. I said, like a 22-year-old hipster barista running around. I'm like, just because he lost his mind doesn't mean that he has to look like that. He lost like 50 pounds. Looks like he was like some
Simple
hipster
Lex
guy. Yeah, and it was weird. I went at more of the Simple Lex. It was just like going after shiny things. This is now like confused Lex. But we'll see what happens and see, because they go to grab him. Amanda Waller wants Lex Luthor. And again, the Superman was a tie-in to Absolute Power. And Amanda Waller desperately wants to get Lex, but she doesn't know it's Simple Lex. And that's kind of funny to me that if that ends up coming into play. But we'll move over to Marvel Comics. We have two books here. I'm going to start. And again, almost, it's weird. It's Phil Kenny Johnson again. Just like the Green Lantern War Journal, I've fallen off a bit on Incredible Hulk. It hasn't been moving forward very fast.
Same with me, Jim,
the joke is it's going nowhere slow. You ended up having like the idea of like town to town, which is fine. That's a Bruce Banner, TV show kind of thing. But
just like a TV show. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but it started getting like, come on, let's get to the big stuff. Let's see what's really going on. You just kept hearing the only thing the big bad of the Mother of Horrors and also the eldest, we'd only hear on the blurb at the beginning and maybe mention one. But this issue felt like okay, we're going to get to it. I said it's issue number 14. I'll give you the credits. Incredible Hulk number 14, written by Philip Kenny Johnson, awesome art by Nick Klein, $3.99. So we have a bunch of those books, which is cool. But you end up where everything seemed like, okay, that's not that important. Let's wait till next. Oh, okay, we didn't do anything. Oh, we're doing this Monster of the Month. Okay. And this one, you actually have a bunch of things hit. You even have at the end a direct path of what Bruce has to do to maybe save Charlie, the girl that's been going along, but it would really damn the Hulk. But in it, what I thought was really crazy, Philip Kenny Johnson does like to use continuity and goes with, you get that Starship Hulk mentioned, and part of a plot point in this issue, that stuff that Donny Cates did that drove me nuts. And it felt cool then because of the way they said it, where Hulk said, you may be sitting in that engine room all the, like he's pissed. That's why he's pissed at Banner. But it really worked out where they were in the mind, scape or the hellscape of Hulk. And if they don't do anything, Banner's going to be trapped forever. And they're in Vegas now. They get to Vegas. I thought it was really good. I thought it was kind of, like I said, almost like not a reset, but hey, we're going to start doing important things issue. And I would think that maybe, Philip Kenny Johnson might have realized the lay of the land, or the talk of the town, or maybe the editor said, you have to get to something. You have to start really going. And the Nick Klein art's great.
Oh, it's unbelievable, Jim. I think it probably is his best issue. Yeah. In my opinion.
And it's all, and also in it, it has a vibe of the Immortal Hulk that everybody liked when you're in the down below kind of deal. And it had all that, and it finally hit all together. In my mind, you get Betty Ross at the end to kind of give this deal with Bruce, and it was really good. So I hope that continues with the pacing. I'm going to let you introduce the next book because you'll probably be attacked by everybody, but I have it on my list as well. But what is it?
Okay, it is the not so controversial, but maybe divisive Ultimate X-Men issue 5, written and drawn by Peach Momoko, and colours by her as well. Letters by Travis Lanham. It's $4.99, Jim. I've got to say, there's something I forgot to mention in my review, and it's that the cover is great. It's a great cover. It's setting up a summer festival, the Natsu Matsuri in Japan, and then There's nothing about that in the actual issue, is there? Did you notice that?
No, it's just like an art. It really lends itself to that watercolor type deal.
Yeah.
But then when you get in it, you expect to see it. You don't.
I was waiting for the festival sees like, here we go, it's going to be great. Lots of like ghosts and like mythological creatures. And then, all right, but it is an excellent issue. I've got to say that. It is really good.
Me and Jason reviewed it on our Marvel podcast, and Jason made the joke at the beginning when he's like, oh my God, they say X-Men. And so many people, I guess they did, they wanted to comment before watching the whole video and started like, oh, so you're just excited. Like, no, he was joking. He was joking about it because even by the end, we said, it was a little forced. I mean, it's nice that you're mentioning things, but
that part did feel forced.
That part felt forced. Why would two little girls say, we're going to be the X-Men? Like maybe say, New Mutants or X Factor, or like whatever you might have the deal, do something. But because it's X-Men, you're going to say that. But
not the X-Girls, Jim. I've heard some criticism like, why is the team all girls?
I wanted the X-Girls.
That doesn't bother me, by the way.
No, it doesn't bother me either. And I think, and I said during the review, and I'll say it now, like we're at issue 5. If you haven't figured out what the book is yet and decided if you like it or not, it's weird because this book is easy to tell. I think this is one of those books, and a lot of people will be shaking their heads because they hate it. I think you read an issue and you know if you're going to like it. And maybe I'll go another. But you get to a point by issue 5 that if you're not liking it, I don't know why you're reading it, but people still, I don't know that they know the background going in with the maker changing things because there's still people commenting when I do reviews and even other places where they're like, where's Wolverine?
Yeah.
Where's this?
Same here.
And in the meantime, legitimately, it looks like Wolverine, his skeleton was shown with the maker and things, but they don't know that background info of the maker and changing things. So it's hard to explain to people like this is a different kind of book. And then they attack Peach Momoko when I say, this is what they wanted. It's not just people.
This is what she said right at the beginning. She's going to kind of bring it into Japan and tell her own story. But it is like an X-Men Outsiders, even New Mutant style of story, isn't it? Yeah. But it is very original.
I even say that it's very Runaways. Especially
the Runaways.
You even have Nico, and they're from the Runaways. So
I don't
mean that, or I don't mean Joan Jett either.
That's the one.
And Lita Ford. But no, she's a little Runaway by Bon Jovi.
Jim, what you were saying about a lot of fans being like not so much hating it, but like, what is this? I think people who who love the original X-Men, that's what they're expecting because they've seen Spider-Man and they've seen Black Panther, and they're pretty much very similar, aren't they, to the regular titles?
Here's how I would explain it to everybody. You end up having the Spider-Man book, Ultimate Spider-Man, where it does feel like you're getting everything you always wanted.
Yeah.
You get the family, you get that. You get a Black Panther that just feels like regular Black Panther.
It does, yeah.
One of these books has to show something that's not the best because the maker made a world that you didn't have superheroes because he wanted to have a world, for him. This isn't a Make-A-Wish, world. This isn't the your hopes and dreams. This is a messed up world that the maker ended up trying to screw. Luckily, you have Tony who ended up getting the stuff to some of the people, including Peter, to have the Spider-Man. Black Panther and all that Wakanda, they were already sectioned away, whatever. But the mutants were screwed. There's something, and we don't know just yet or whatever. They were screwed, but you can't hold them down because it's a mutation. So really what I think that they did, and a lot of other people did, you kept them separate. You kept them so they couldn't get together. You kept an Xavier out of the way. You get the big ones out of the picture. The maker won't want to have a world where Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, he's not going to want that. And he knows.
Yeah,
and
no
that's
way.
The thing. The maker, this isn't like picking and choosing on a whim. He knows what happens. He was in the 616. He knows how this was supposed to be. He's trying to screw with it. But
has
what
he done
we're seeing
something somehow to inhibit, the development of the powers?
Or, like I said,
the gene.
Separating it, but it's becoming a thing in Japan through a lot of Japanese symbolism and all that, and even the blood magic and stuff. So it's like you can't hold it down. It just happens that this is where we're following and this is where it's happening. But if you don't like that, I understand. I've said a million times,
too.
I will never, ever recommend Ultimate X-Men as a book to anybody because I think it's something you have to like on your own or hate on your own. And I wouldn't know. Because even some person was like, I get people, I love manga and I hate this. And I like manga and I love this. And I don't need this. Where's Wolverine? It's so weird. But really, the only thing that I would say as a general deal, don't attack Peach Momoko because she's writing a book that obviously Hickman is on board with as well. She's just doing this book in her way. And usually what happens in stuff like this, people applaud somebody that is going a different route and trying to give something unique. But because people so much want the dreamscape of the X-Men, of I want everything that I ever wanted, but it's not that book. And unfortunately, the first issue of X-Men in the From the Ashes wasn't great, but you have that book.
They want Chris Claremont, don't they? They want that like era of X-Men back.
It gets so personal with people.
Yeah.
It's not just like, I don't like that book. It's like, she draws like she's in second grade and she should this. And I'm like, and really, quite frankly, overall, she everything I've seen, she's the nicest person. She doesn't do anything wrong. She actually won't even charge people. A Japanese thing, I believe. She won't, like, that's almost like tipping, I guess, in her mind. But she'll do a drawing for you, and she will not charge.
I met her here, Jim, in Tokyo Comic Con, and she was lovely. She was really, really polite. She doesn't speak any English. My husband is really good at English, so he kind of translates and stuff.
Is that
for
who
her.
Translates the book?
I don't think it's him. No.
Yeah, I think that she's a gem. But overall, again, if you've been waiting for stuff to happen, it's still happening at a slower pace. But in this, we kind of see that might definitely be the Shadow King kid. But what I thought was really big is there's an organization, kind of like the Runaways. There's an organization where it looks like the parents grab all the kids and they go, and it's the Homo Superior deal. You know, it's Magneto's not there, might be whatever how they play it, but the Homo Superior has started up, and there's, the girl Surge. That you had the characters in this book, and they all felt like, oh, they're just cutesy schoolgirls, and they're all good. And then you see that Surge that we saw a little of the last issue, that she ain't good. No. She is not good at all. She's like a rent-a-girlfriend who shocked the crap out of the guy. And didn't shock him by she shocked him and then stole his money and left. And the guy, the kid who ends up involved that is messing with, Seiko, they kind of know each other, but they don't like each other.
We might actually get some decent villains for a change, actual villains being villainous.
And I think there are some layers to it, but again, I'm not going to say that anybody who's not reading it should read it, but if you want to check it out, that's fine. And just don't attack people just because you don't get what you want in one book. That kind of is shitty. But we'll go to Indie, because that's it for the Marvel. We have Incredible Hulk number 14 and Ultimate X-Men number 5. But we'll go to Indie, and you have a lot of picks in the Indie side of things. So I'm going to give it off to you. The first one, though, is a guy, again, I don't know if anybody likes him anymore. I don't know, but I think he's pretty cool. But what is the first pick?
Okay, the first one is from Dark Horse. It's called Paranoid Gardens, issue 1. It's got the return of writer Gerard Way, but it's also, I think, being co-written by Sean Simon. Mm-hmm. Art by Chris Weston. Price $4.99. How to summarize this book, Jim? Because you've looked through it, haven't you? It's out there. It's bonkers. It's bizarre.
It's so crazy. It messed with my mind. I started reading it. I'm like, I got to read all these things. I start reading. I'm like, I don't know. It's starting to make my head swirl.
It's like a care center. It's like basically Deep Space Nine, but as a care center on Earth with aliens, with superheroes, like being cared for by these human staff or not quite human staff. It's just bizarre. It's out there, but for me, it's inventive. That's what I like. I like a bit of weirdness, Jim.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird. I mean, you love Grant Morrison, so and it's even weirder than that. I thought
Gerard Way was a huge fan, as we talked about. He was a massive fan of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol run, wasn't he?
Yeah, and as just a deal, I like Gerard Way. I think he's a unique guy and pretty cool. But yeah, in the meantime, like I said, I open it up. It looked crazy. Started reading it, and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to hit for me. But I might go back and try to read it again. I need to sit down and really read it, not in the way of, okay, I have 10 books to read today, and I got to get through those. Because
it's quite long as well, Jim. It's like 32 pages. Yeah, so
I think the day, I think it was Friday morning, I had to read, I believe, 23 books in 2 hours. And so Jesus. I was like, real. And I'm telling you, I'm not a fast reader because I end up getting distracted. So I had to put like white noise in my earphones. I get all this stuff that I have to get going. And I got to that and it's not going to happen. I just can't do it. So I had to put that aside. But just as a shout out, Wes, from the Thinking Critical. I do a show with him on his Patreon, and I ended up where he didn't like it either. He thought it was weird and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
same deal. But I know you like weird stuff. I'm not even going to say that I didn't like it. I ended up where I just couldn't go, but you like
just
weird stuff.
I found it funny. It's got a good sense of humor as well, which, is important.
And I'll tell you, that's why we have the show and a bunch of things, I have checked out because of Gray AI here. I do trust your taste. I do trust your taste, immensely, so I will check it out and then I'll curse you out.
You're one of one, Jim, who trusts my taste.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, really. So I'll end up I'll end up, being very mad at you, but I do want to check it out. But the next book I know is good. I just haven't caught up on it. But you go again.
Just briefly, because it's Dark Horse again. This is Usagi Yojimbo, The Crow, issue 4. I think it's 4 out of 5. It's a 5-part story. Mm-hmm. It's just, excellent storytelling by Stan Sakai. If you want a good lesson in how to pace a story, check this series out. That's what I think. Really good.
Yeah, he's so good. Yeah,
he is.
And I like the character a lot. And I said I kind of learned about him in a crossover with TMNT.
Oh yeah.
In a couple of the things that we had gone through. We have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast, and ended up going, and I had always seen the character, but I never really got into it. And then I started kind of going through stuff, and it is awesome. It's so good. And this mini has been good.
Yeah,
I read the first issue. I liked the first issue, but I haven't read anything since.
It's so clever how he does it. He's what's the word? He's kind of commenting on modern themes, but it's set in in like medieval Japan almost. So the way he does it, you've got great relationships between the characters. There's family issues in here. There's an orphan story in this one, which is actually quite moving. We've got a character, Jim, who is really kind of pissing you off to start with, but by issue 4, part 4, he's become almost lovable. It's so clever how he does that, Stan Sakai.
That reminds me of the Nate and Geiger. The idea that I was, I love when stories have that, when a character shows up, because that takes a lot of character.
It's actually development, isn't it? Yeah,
you have to have that. And usually, what they'll have in a lot of books is somebody will come in, kiss a baby, give somebody $10, and you're like, that's a great person. But I love where they can play.
Consistently. Oh, you're amazing. You're so good.
You're the best, Miss Marvel. That's what you're talking about. That or Naomi. Over at DC, how much they were telling her.
Don't tell, just show why these characters are good. And he does that, Stan Sakai.
So that's awesome. And Stan Sakai's a legend, so I do not doubt what you're saying is true. So now we'll go to the next. It's you again.
Oh my God, is it really? It's the Grey Show.
The book you're going to talk, this is the book that I was talking about at the beginning that maybe people wouldn't have been aware of it. And even if they were, they might not know the character or things like that, but I love the character. I think that's one of the best characters in all of literature and whatever. So I will read this. I will tell everybody, me and you both had the review copy for it. And sometimes they'll put watermarks on and I understand that, they don't want people to put out. Yeah. This was one of the worst watermarks. I mean, I can't even consider a watermark. It looked like a stamp that was just boom on every page. I could not read it.
Jim. You're right. Yeah, it's a huge stamp, and it does spoil the reading experience.
It's so crazy that I started reading because I was really looking forward to this. But now we're talking about Elric, the Necromancer, #1, just so that people know. I will step on your toes there. But the idea of, I love Elric, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I got that review copy, and I'm like, I can't read it. So I am going to read it. I'm going to get it. And then I'm sure that if you say it's good, that I can do it because I do like the character a lot. But you tell us about it.
Okay, I don't know for sure, but I think this might have been published already in France as one of those, bande dessinée, like graphic novels. It's written by Julien Blondel, and it's got art by Jean-Luc Cano, and it just looks gorgeous. As soon as you see the art, as you've seen it, Jim, it's beautifully drawn, isn't it? The the Elric universe is on the page for all to see. Reminds me of Conan a little bit, Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's from Titan Comics, and even people ended up where they're hoping maybe you get a crossover or even having something in the Savage Sword with Elric. And this is the thing.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you totally. I was probably in 7th grade. So, I was about 12. And I ended up seeing a book that my one friend said, and legit, I saw Moorcock and laughed so hard and started making fun of him. Like, what are you reading? What are you reading? Moorcock? And then he's like, no. And he started explaining it to me. And I'm like, oh. That's pretty crazy. And then I ended up reading, and it was awesome. And I loved it ever since. At one point, I had like a whole top shelf of Michael Moorcock's stuff, and
No way.
that ended up getting like that slowly. Like people who are married for a while, you understand the idea of things that you had and you were so happy and proud of that suddenly they get moved to another room. Then they get put in boxes. Then they're in the basement, and then there's a flood, and they're done. They're all done. I had so many different things like that. I had Philip K. Dick stuff, Alfred Bester, all these things that I love.
Wow.
All gone. All gone. And the Conan stuff that I had.
They're all names that I'm a big fan of, by the way. I'm impressed, Jim.
Yes, that was me name dropping to be fancy to people. You don't realize while I was doing that, my pinky was up because I'm such a fancy guy. But tell us about the deal.
Okay, well, just from the synopsis briefly, it's picking up a story which I think has been going on for a while, but you don't feel like you're lost in this. You can just read it as a one and done. It's 2 years after the sack of a great city. You've got Elric wandering across the land, very Conan style. There's a great scene where he's on a ship, we get a crazy pirate attack at sea, Jim, which is awesome towards the end. But Elric, for people who don't know, he's a fascinating character because he's not like your regular kind of, strong barbarian. He's a weird character. He takes a lot of drugs for a start, doesn't he? He puts himself into trances and stuff.
And it's funny because it really goes with the idea. And again, this was at a point, my mom is British, so we would end up going to England a lot. And that's where I really got into it because it's a very British
it is, isn't it?
Feeling deal. Yeah. But I really like it. And then he's like, pretty much, white, completely albino type deal. And it sticks out and it's striking in the deal as well. So it's really cool.
Anyone's watching House of the Dragon at the moment, House of the Dragon, the TV show, you've got Elric on screen. Matt Smith, who played Doctor Who back in the day, he looks amazing. He's got like the long white hair. He's very pale. It's Elric on screen.
And it's funny. I'm like, yeah, he does have a big chin. That's all I think of Matt Smith. I love Matt Smith. I think he's great. But yeah, I'm looking through it. It looks great. And if you are, that's the thing. It's coming from Titan anyway. But if you like Conan, it's well worth a look. You can even looking through it. I'm like, yeah, you can. It's beautiful not as crazy art as maybe some of the stuff in the Conan, but that fits the Conan book. This fits this. I can tell, and a really great cover too. That cover is awesome in that. But yeah, I will be reading that probably tomorrow morning. Checking that out. I
think Sus Gabe was a fan as well, by the way. Just a shout out, Sus Gabe.
Yeah, the weird thing is, I think. Oh, did he do a review of it?
He's done a written review.
Okay, I'll have to check it out because another book that came out that I thought was the Rocketeer book. I didn't love it, but Gabe told me he was a big Rocketeer fan. I thought he didn't review it. I
read it too. I thought it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible.
It was kind of mid.
Yeah, it was kind of mid.
There was a couple things, and usually we just go through the books that we really like. But another one that I was kind of looking forward to was Witchblade. Thinking, okay, I'll jump into this. That was pretty mid too. I was not very impressed. Was it?
Yeah, it looked interesting.
It was very generic though, and it's Marguerite Bennett, but it just wasn't that interesting. But we have one book left. This is on my pick. I don't think it was the greatest of the series yet. It's Redcoat #4. I have actually people didn't like that first issue a lot. Some people. I liked it. I've liked every issue of Redcoat. This one I still like. I don't love though. And the others I think I love. And Redcoat #4 is written by Jeff Johns with art by, it keeps giving me Andrew Curry every time I look up. It's Brian Hitch. And it's $3.99, which is well worth it. But this one kind of slams the brakes on the pacing a bit. And what I liked about Redcoat was the breakneck speed of the pacing. You're always being chased. Because you end up having Simon and Albert Einstein being chased by these founding fathers in this group. And they're jumping fences. They're doing all these things. This one stops with a flashback at the beginning to show you how Albert Einstein got to America. And lo and behold, he's stowed away on a ship. It wasn't that many things that we needed to know there, except that he stole a lockpick because he's then going to use it. It felt to me like you didn't need that scene.
It slowed it right down, didn't it? I thought it slowed the pace down. Yeah.
Then you end up having in the middle, I thought it was kind of clever, but I know some people probably wouldn't like it, but you have a page where there's no light. It's in darkness. And you do have Albert and Simon going back and forth with each other. I thought it was kind of funny, the play, but the pacing stopped.
It was funny. I was like, hey, come on, how long are you going to do this for? These completely black panels,
Exactly. And it was the weird thing because I'm like, it's the opposite of a silent issue. It's only a talking, there's no art. It's just black. But then they end up, and by the end, there's a big reveal. I guess it's far enough on to spoil things. I didn't even spoil it on our podcast, but you have Simon and Albert get saved by Benedict Arnold, which is kind of a crazy thing. But the one thing Benedict Arnold has really made clear is he hates George Washington. And there's hints and hints and hints. And by the end, if you don't know, it's going to be George Washington as this big architect of the founding fathers. You know, maybe you're foreign, or at least not from the U.S. Because if you are in the U.S. and you did, it's very obvious, but other people it might not be. But in the end, yeah, George Washington's the big bad at this point, and Benedict Arnold hates him. I love the idea that Benedict Arnold, like, they come out from underground and they're in the middle of a bunch of cherry trees, and Benedict Arnold hates George Washington so much that he doesn't even like cherries because they're connected to him. That made me giggle. But the big play is, and it's a clever thing with Jeff Johns, Benedict Arnold, one of the most biggest villains in the U.S. history deal. George Washington looked at almost like a god, and you switched it where George Washington is the bad guy. And Benedict Arnold looks like he might end up being more heroic.
My head, Jim, because I know George Washington, but I don't know Benedict Arnold. So
Benedict Arnold. I'm surprised that they're in class there in Manchester, and they're like, we're going to learn a little bit about what we call the Great Law. I don't know what you would even call it, like the Revolutionary War. It's called, but there was only one hero, Benedict Arnold, who sold out those stinking people who ended up not being, grateful for what they did, and I think that's what he did. He sold out some U.S. deal. So that's it. So in the U.S., if you say somebody's a Benedict Arnold, that means that they're a traitor. That's just completely. And I think that's kind of lost in the bit. One of the greatest examples is, and make no sense, is Peter in the Brady Bunch. He ended up in a play, and he ended up playing Benedict Arnold, which made everybody hate him in the he's only in a play. He's Benedict Arnold because he was told to be bad. And they're like, you're not allowed to come to the party because you're a traitor. I'm like, these kids are taking it way too far.
Kids can be so cruel.
Oh, my God, a traitor. Drove me nuts. You can't be on the sports team because you'll be a traitor. I'm like, he's in a play. It's not Benedict Arnold, you jerks. Everybody needs to watch Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island, by the way. But that is it, our longest show ever. I kind of thought when we were going off on tangents, but I hope people liked it.
Blame me for all the indie picks, Jim.
It's not. It's me yelling about Peach and Momoko, I think, was the big play. And then talking about Brady Bunch, my favorite show ever. And then people are like, you're an old man. And they are correct. But all of this, and also if you watch the Gilligan's Island, you must watch the Gilligan's Island with the Harlem Globetrotters when they end up going to the island. But in the meantime, do you know who the Harlem Globetrotters are, Gray?
I do. You know what? You know how I know that? It's from comic books, the back covers of old Marvel comic books.
The best thing is, the Harlem Globetrotters more than Benedict Arnold. That is the best. Probably more than George Washington. That is the best. Because people like Meadowlark Lemon and Curly need to be known. That's what I say. But all in all, I hope that everybody enjoyed it. Please let us know what your favorite comics are in these, because there's so many comics. We don't read everything. We miss some things, and some things people like more than others. And you may end up, actually getting somebody involved in a comic that you like and something that could grow and grow, because really it's tough. A lot of people want to talk about the comics that are horrible and that they hate. I like talking about the stuff that we like. And then I'll go and talk about the stuff I hate on every other thing I do. But this is in the most anticipated show. I like to think it's being pretty positive. So I hope that people enjoy that.
It's best of the week, isn't it, Jim? Picks of the week. So yeah, we've got to be positive.
Somehow we still find a way to badmouth something. But that's just us. That's just our getting raised in the 80s and 90s, especially in the 90s. You're not allowed to like anything.
We're so cynical, really, aren't we?
It was until Oasis came. We just wanted to be rock stars. I think that they paved the way out of it. But with all of that, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Gray, for joining me once again. Please go to the show notes because there is a link to Gray's YouTube channel, Wakazashi's Tea House. He ends up having a bunch of awesome shows. He has a show where he just kind of talk about some random things, and I think it's the Waffle Show. I end up going every Friday night. It's usually on it that I go and hang out with everybody as well. So please do that and check out all his videos. But thanks, Gray, for joining me.
Cheers, Jim.
And thanks, everybody else, and we'll talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.